Well, I was born in Dorset in England, and I emigrated to New Zealand in 1962 and spent 2 years on a farm, or 18 months on a farm actually, before I went herd testing and did 3 years herd testing in Taranaki, South Taranaki, around the Howrah area mainly. And then I went back to the UK for a trip and came back to New Zealand. I had a year herd testing again. That was in around this area, or Cambridge, Tarawari, Eureka. And I met my wife, Shirley. She was working in the herd improvement office in London Street. And then I decided herd testing wasn't quite the right job for a married man, so I went to Ruakura, and I spent the rest of my years at Ruakura as working years, and retired in 2003. Even as a schoolboy, I enjoyed it as a hobby. I went to a school at the age of 11 where they had good woodworking facilities, and I got interested and I started to gather up a few tools and got interested. But when I travelled overseas, I didn't have the facilities, and so I didn't do any more woodwork until I got married, and I started to do a little bit of woodwork again. And then I saw advertised in the paper a wood carving class in Melville High School in Hamilton. Derek Kerwood was the teacher, and I went along initially just thinking it would be quite an advantage to have a little bit of carving knowledge to go with my other woodworking. But I was so keen on the carving that the carving took over, and I really did almost nothing but carving for many years. So I've done wood carving, turning, and I've also been a bit of a model maker. I've done a couple of model ships, and more recently the church in Cambridge, the St Andrew's Church in Cambridge. Well, it's very nice to have an area where you can shut yourself off from the rest of the goings on in the household, and where all the lawnmowers kept and the wheelbarrow, and you can sort of shut yourself off, and it's always nice to be able to lock it off and walk away with some delicate things sometimes just sitting around. With carving, you haven't got quite the outlay. You need a minimum of perhaps 3 or 4 chisels, and you can do a lot with 3 or 4 chisels, which if you can get them second hand is very cheap, but if you buy them new, you're looking at a bit more money. The only other thing you need is somewhere to hold your whatever you're carving. So you may need a bench or a vise, or even on a tabletop with some clamps will do. And you need a mallet to be able to hit the chisels. You need some sharpening gear, but it's not going to cost you an enormous amount. If you go into turning, well, then you are going to need sometime another lathe. But if you want to go along to a class, well, then you can use the lathes that the club provides, and do spend your time turning at the club on their lathes under some instruction. Some things with carving you need to do a lot more planning, and with some of the things I carve, if I've got a picture of it, I can't visualise it in a 3D. I absolutely have to make a model of it first before I can start to actually carve it. And I use plasticine as my medium to take the picture and then make it into a what I want the carving to be, followed by the measuring then from the plasticine model to be able to get, and that's sometimes a considerable amount of work to get it all right in the model of the plasticine model first. Oh, many. Glue is a very good item to have handy. Yes, there was some, as you say, ups moments with some of that delicate work, because some of it is, unfortunately, has got to be on the cross grain, which means that you've got the short grain running across some of the pieces at the lower part here. And unfortunately, it does mean that at times one is liable to break with a small slip or knocking it inadvertently. Well, wood carving is the one that I probably enjoy the most, but really it's whatever I'm working on at the time. It's the thing that I'm most interested in. I suppose I'm a better carver than a turner, but and another thing that I'm very keen on is whittling, which is just sitting down with a knife and whittling out little links and balls in cages. I like to pick up seashells when I see them on the beach and bring them home and copy them in wood. And I've done something like about 70 odd seashells over the years. Some I have occasionally bought seashells to copy. Some of the more intricate ones have been done in that way, having to buy the seashell to be able to copy it, because we don't see them in New Zealand. That's the type of machine that when I went onto a farm in England in my younger years, that's how we milked our cows, using those bucket plant machines. And I had always thought I'd like to make one, so I got in touch with the people that were in charge of the museum at Mystery Creek, and they were quite willing for me to photograph it and measure it, and so I came up with that in the finish. It's mostly made out of paulownia, and there's walnut. The tubes representing the tubes are made of walnut. And there's one other wood in it, it's a bit of mahogany, which is The rubber seals on the pulsators are made of mahogany. When I was at work at Ruakura, I enjoyed my lunch hour by whittling away with some chains, and I used to take a different piece of wood every time I'd finished one. I'd bring a different piece of wood to work and whittle that, and every time I did a different design, and the years plodded on, and I didn't do many in a year, only about 5, but over a 20-year period I'd got quite a few when I left, which ended up as 107 when I finished work in year 2003, and I've plodded on with them since. Just I sit down sometimes and have a relaxing few minutes away from what I'm doing at the time with a whittled chain, and I've done now about 186 different woods with 186 different designs. This is a whittled vase, and it's got links and balls and cages in the round about the top half of the vase. I've whittled things that have been a wide variety of timbers, but for something that you've got to get in the low down in a vase like that, it needs to be something that can be cut easily with using the blades. It was a bit of a challenge, I must say, but I don't mind when things take a long time. When I go to make something, I think, well, if I start now and I finish whenever I finish, and if I've enjoyed myself in the meantime, that's all that matters. There's quite a few people who retire, and a woodworking hobby is great for them. We go around to, we have done quite a few going to old people's homes and giving them a demonstration on how to do our woodworking, how we do it, usually taking along a small lathe. We've been to quite a few events, which years ago we used to go to the home show in Hamilton and show off our work, and people were very interested, and sometimes we got club members via those sorts of events. Well, give it a go, because it can be very rewarding. Also, to come along to a club, that's where you can improve. One of the things with starting off anything is that you need to, if you can get the advice from somebody who's done turning or carving for years, they can pass on the information, and you can get a lot of help from them. Yeah. But it is a wonderful hobby. My neighbour and I go out to craft fairs, and we have some interesting moments at times. Sometimes we have one another on, and does some lovely work, and when he went out once, I made a note which said "Made in Taiwan" and put it on his work. When he came back, he didn't see it, and I thought, well, I can't leave that on there, so I sort of tried to get the notice away, and he saw me and he said, "What's that?" And I said, "Oh, I had "Made in Taiwan" on your work." So we have a lot of laughs when we go out. Yes, I just think that having something that keeps you busy is marvellous for a retired person. If you're bored in retirement, it's not too good. So if you can keep busy, it's great. And I certainly keep busy, and never a dull moment really. And it's also the company is always so good. I've enjoyed the company of fellow woodworkers, and we go out, club members get together and go out to various events. You've always got somebody that you can, oh, I'll go and see him about. You want some advice. Doesn't matter how experienced you might get in woodwork, there's always something that comes up that somebody knows more about than you do.